Shalom, when the staff souls by giving all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, B'Shem Kodash. Double honors to the apostle, great millstone, and honors to you brothers doing the work, the most in truth and in sincerity. Yahweh's real name, of whom the world inly calls God, Jehovah Yahweh. His real name is Yahweh. His son's true name is Yahweh Shai. And when we pray Yahweh, Ba'Hashem Yahushua, but in, having that and Sham, meaning names Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai. Real quick, I just wanted to, just touch on this. Really, since this whole stuff about this guy, right, has been in the news recently. The latest Trove was sick, but this is it. We knew what these men were doing anyway, and what's happening is they're just bringing it to the forefront, right? But the statement is just like he has been able to, for a long time, with his media, and that's what is all that's going to happen. He's going to use his media, right, to basically paint the brush that it ain't all of them, right? It's just him, right? When you had a group of what do you call it? I was seeing if I had it here, right? When you had a group of so-called Elam, well, not so-called, but a group of Elam, right, so-called Asians, South Asians and that, right, allegedly doing stuff here in England, right? It was called Asian grooming gangs, right? So why don't we call Epstein and I see I was trying not to say the name, right? Why don't we call that white grooming gangs? Okay, but that's because he knows how to basically to use the media to keep the world right in darkness, right? Which the Lord had a precept here from before, but it says Isaiah 60:2 says, "For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people," right? And that darkness encompasses many things, right? And the fact that most people out here are just straight up bugged out, right? People don't know what the hell is going on, have no idea, right? But another thing is that he actually pushes that darkness upon the people, right? And part of that allows him to cloak himself, if you will, right, and to make himself be seen as an angel of light. 2 Corinthians 11:14, and no marvel for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. So you actually have people, right, that that look up to this Edomite, right? The good people that actually look up to these. However, what did the scripture say about this, man? This is Malachi 1:4. This is where Edom saith, "We are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down. They shall call them the border of wickedness, and the people against whom the Lord Yahweh hath indignation forever." Okay, and then we can also get was the First Maccabees, the first chapter, right? We're going to jump down to right. It says First Maccabees 1:9, right? It says it's 1:9. It says, "And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves." Right. Let me read from 7 Salakia. It says, "So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare rule, everyone in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns on themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth." Okay. So when these Edomites are around, right, they proliferate wickedness. They proliferate evil. Okay. All right, see what precepts we have here. It says, I'll read it. It says Proverbs 29:16, "When the wicked are multiplied, transgression is increased." Oh yeah, that is one. I thought it was a different precept for a second there. Slakia. "When the wicked are multiplied, transgression increaseth, but the righteous shall see their fall." And that's what we're waiting for, right? And that's why when we're seeing all of these different things coming out, we'll read a little bit into this article in a second, but all of this sort of stuff. Now we understand, as always with Esau, there is a game being played, right? But even still, right, we enjoy it. Okay, we enjoy Esau's shame being lifted, right? Habakkuk 2:16, "Thou art filled with shameful glory, drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of Yahweh's right hand shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spoon shall be on thy glory." And that's what you're seeing throughout happening, right? A shameful spoon in Esau's glory, right? He can no longer try and really although he wants to, right, and he wants to get back into that spirit. The apostles and elders speak always of that scientific racism, but there are certain things now he can't, he can't talk about with so much pride. because the dark nations, right, are basically calling him out on it. Okay, he's being called out on a lot of the stuff that he's been doing, right, and rightfully so, right. Let's grab this. Hopefully, it's in here as a preset. Nope, I know where it is. Okay, this is Job 1:6, right? Not Job, Obadiah. It's lucky. Obadiah 1:6. How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sorted up? Right, all of the nasty things that he be doing, right? That's more and more is being brought out. Right now, he is once again through his media and stuff like that. He's trying not to paint himself, as a as a freak, right? But we know he's a freak. He's always been a freak. That's his MO. Okay, he ain't right. Okay, this Edomite ain't right. Right. In fact, we can go back to Habakkuk 2, right, and read that. It's Habakkuk 2:4. Right, it says, "Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith." Right. So that first part's talking about Esau. That last part, Jake. Right. Now let's be on that first part. Esau ain't right, man. Right. He's used his media machines to basically pull a wool over people's eyes, but we're not fooled. Right. We know what this man is. Right. This is him in his natural state. Right. In fact, there's a precept here, or I'm just jump. Right, it says Job. No, why is that not? No, that's not a precept there. Come on, man. Come on, Luke. It's Job 30 from the top. It says, "But now they that are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to set with the dogs of my flock." Right, and then you come to find out these. Was one of the things these men were. Delving into that bestiality, right? But once again, this is them in their default state. They're base people, right? There's nothing that they won't do, right? One of the things we were touching on, right, is how you go no, you don't go, but it's like they make these fallacies that women will use, right, for their personal enjoyment, let's just say it like that, right? And then you have ones that are shaped like those of an animal, man, right? So it's just this is Esophy, okay? The heathen of the heathens. This is verse 2 says, "Yea, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished? For want and famine, they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness, in former time desolate and waste, who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. They were driven forth from among men. They cried after them as after a thief, to dwell in the clefts of the rock, in caves of the earth, and in the rocks. Right, among the bushes they brayed, under the nettles they were gathered together. They were children of fools, yea, children of base men. They were viler than the earth." Right, and that's just the thing, man. It's just like showing you the power of the Lord. The fact that this man is in power, and not just in power, he's in a lot of power, right? He's in a lot of power, but then the fact that you get people that look up to him, and part of that he's hidden a whole load of his history. You think about the whole thing with evolution and the Big Bang, right? To basically make any to one discount the Most High, right? But then to also come as part of hiding his history, right? He is the the pinnacle of evolution. He is the most evolved one, right? That's what and I always thought about this. I know different brothers, elders, different people have said this basically, right? Is the point of like, he don't like to give Jake anything, so why are they so hot on giving Jake? Civilization began in Africa, right? Because they believe in evolution. That false theory, right? Scripture says this. This is 1 Timothy 6:20. It says, "O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings, and oppositions of science falsely so called." So that's man, right? Oppositions of science falsely so called, right? He loves pushing, these dodgy sciences, right? Just to part of that, to hide who he really is. Okay, But we understand you. We know you, Esau, right? We know you. We know that you've just been given this position, but the Lord is getting ready to take it away, man. And that we can't wait, right? So this is just another example of an Edomite, right? This is just another example of an Edomite that's been, that's would you call it? That's that's basically acting as an Edomite, really, right? And even certain of these things, man, it's it's interesting, right? The way it's been titled, the names involved, and this, that, and the other. It's interesting. I'll just leave it at that, right? So it says camp leader jailed for drugging and abusing boys, right? It says a former vet, teacher, and summer camp leader who laced sweets with a tranquilizer and gave them to boys before doing stuff to them has been jailed for more than 23 years, right? So it says John Reuben used the cloak of Christianity to carry out the attacks on vulnerable children, right? The 76-year-old drugged his wife Susan to ensure she would not wake up while the abuse took place, allegedly. Right, in court, she labeled her husband of 24 years as a sadistic, monstrous, that word, adding she had begun divorce proceedings. Right, so basically, he got caught, right, and he's basically given her a way out. Okay, that's basically what's happened there. It says in a joint statement issued after the hearing, parents of the victim says Reuben was a devious child thingy. So the statement read, John Reuben portrayed himself as a good Christian man, right, and someone who could trust to be in charge of the care of our children. And that's the thing, you can't trust no Edomites, man, right? It says Hosea 4:6, right? So my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge, right? One of the things I go into is this idea of, an important piece of knowledge is knowing who your enemy is, right? Jake don't know who their enemy is, right? They look at Edomites and they think, oh, that's my friend. Now, do you have our people that look like Edomites? Yeah, of course. Right? That's just part of the mystery, right? But but as a whole, it's like Jake will just look at any so-called white man and just be like, oh, would you call it? If they smile in their face, oh yeah, that's a cool geezer, right? Not without trying the spirit, without knowing what kind of individual that they're dealing with. Now when we see someone, just in our nature, we're always questioning. All right, what are they, Jay? Like, what are they, right? The scriptures talk about prudence, right? And you see all of these sweets, right? This is the funniest thing is he's probably one too, right? Temporary Detective Chief Inspector Neil Holden, right? He's probably one too. He's probably gone to them to the real Diddy parties. Okay. And it's always these churches, right? The Catholic Church. There's another church here. Yeah, people want to, try and portray, not even try, just straight up slandering, the men of GMS, starting off the apostles on down. They're just slandering. But then you get people that are actually doing this and nothing's happening to them. Okay? This is going to be one of many, right? One of a multitude, right? But, they ain't going, you going to have Jake that's going to go to another church on Sunday, right? It's going to have a guy like this in there, and Jake is still going to leave their children with them, right? Or whatever heathen nation, because he gets to be an individual, whereas everyone else is painted with the same brush. Okay, so I just wanted to get into that, man. Because the time of E having this, and that's a beautiful thing. Because in E and his media, right, he's trying not to paint himself as a people, right, in a quote negative light like that, right. They'll always try to frame it in a way where it's just one individual, right, not that it's all of them. Okay. However, we are of the understanding, that ultimately it's going to be the Most High. The Most High is going to have Esau, beheaded more. And the thing is, more and more as you go online, you're seeing more and more people coming up against E, right? Like even what you call it, them Moabites and Ammonites, right? There was a whole big thing about Edomites going in the States, right? And then going and using their what's it called, their shops, because the Edomites will go in there, right? Here it is. Growing up, they used to make fun of the Moabites' food, and then now it's trendy. Now they want to eat it, and they go in their shops, make everything expensive, and this, that, and the other. Okay, that is just the nature of these heathen. When that was trending, like maybe back end of 2025, right? I was like, right, that's interesting, right? Because Moab and Esau, that's just like a team, right? Yeah, even Moab's looking at Esau funny, right? But we've been looking at Esau funny, man, right? So as always, and in fact, let me end on that, right? This is Isaiah. Where is it? Isaiah 14, right, and 16. It says 15, right? It says, "Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee." Right. So right now you're in this lofty position. People look up to you, right? But the Lord is going to flip that. Right. It says, and consider thee, saying, "Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness, and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened up the houses of his prisoners? All the kings of the nations, even all of them, lie in glory, everyone in his own house. But thou art cast out of thy grave like an abominable branch, and as a raiment of those that are slain, thrust through with the sword, that go down to the stones of the pit, as a carcass trodden under feet." Right? And that's it. He's going to be brought right down, and the nations are going to start looking at him again. It's like, yo, look at this guy. And be like, oh, look at this guy. This guy's just he's just Esau. And that's part of our punishment, is just looking at him, just knowing he's Esau, and there's nothing we can do about him. Watching as people around us, our family members or whatever, look up to this devil. So I said, just as always, Lord's will always edify him. Till next time we say, Shalom.